There we go. Are we good? I think so. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم إنكم ظلمتم أنفسكم باتخاذكم العجل فتوبوا إلى بارئكم فاقتلوا أنفسكم ذلكم خير لكم عند بارئكم فتاب عليكم إنه هو التواب الرحيم. وإذ قلتم يا موسى لن نؤمن لك حتى نرى الله جهرة فأخذتكم الصاعقة وأنتم تنظرون ثم بعثناكم من بعد موتكم لعلكم تشكرون رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. Once again, everybody, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There are a couple of important things that I wanted to mention before we move on with the ayat. In regards to the ayahs we've already studied, I walked you through the scene of Musa alayhi salam being called up to receive the revelation of Torah. That was for a period of 40 days of fasting, and then Allah Azza wa Jal gave him the Torah. And through that you notice that there's a deep connection between fasting and revelation. And that's actually upheld even in this religion of ours, in Islam, as finally revealed by Allah Azza wa Jal. The month is also the month of fasting. And that connection was there even at the time of Musa alayhi salam. As a matter of fact, a similar account is also mentioned in the New Testament of Isa alayhi salam, that when he received the Injil, he was actually also to do 30 days of fasting. So this account of 30, and as a matter of fact, Surah Al-A'raf will tell us that even Musa alayhi salam was actually called for 30 days, and then he was asked to do an extra 10. That it was actually originally 30, and then he was asked to do another 10. And in Baqarah, which is revealed later on, Baqarah is Madani, A'raf is Makki. So Allah is summarizing the account by calling it 40 days, arba'ina laylatan. So that's one thing I wanted to bring to your attention. The other is an important concept in the study of any surah of the Quran. Just to make it easy for you guys to understand, I think you can use the term anchors. Anchors meaning Allah Azza wa Jal will use a word or a phrase that He already used in the surah, and He'll use it again in a completely different context. And by using it, He's reminding you of something He already said. So He's making a connection between what He said before to what He's saying later. Now you know, speakers, or if you're listening to a long speech or something, you might notice that a speaker made reference to something 10 minutes ago, and then he kind of alluded to it 10 minutes later, and it becomes kind of like an inside joke. Like anybody who just walked in and heard him say it didn't laugh, but people who were listening to him from the beginning saw that he was calling on something that he brought to your minds earlier on, right? So that's kind of an anchor. You're using something you mentioned and echoing it one more time. You're dropping that anchor again. So what happens is we saw the story of Adam alayhi salam. And in the story of Adam alayhi salam, Allah says He gave him the words that he could make tawbah with. And we talked about what those words were. رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أنفسنا, that we wronged ourselves. That's from Surah Al-A'raf. But the idea was mentioned that Allah gave him the words. And notice when we came to this story and they had wronged themselves, the same phrase, the different, same exact verbiage, إِنَّكُمْ ظَلَمْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا إِنَّكُمْ ظَلَمْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ. You've wronged yourselves. In other words, what he had to do was tawbah. What you have to do is also tawbah. It's actually a continuation of what was given to Adam alayhi salam. Then فَتُوبُوا إِلَى بَارِئِكُمْ, and by the end فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ. And what did Allah say about Adam alayhi salam? فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. Now what's he saying? فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِنَّهُ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. It's actually echoing the same exact phrase. Allah accepted his tawbah just like He was willing to accept yours. But the thing is, the mistake made by Adam alayhi salam is one in which in a sense, it cost him Jannah, even though we explained that that's a test. But in a sense, now as a result of that mistake, he has to now, earn Jannah once again. And he's going to be put on trial on the earth. These guys, what mistake they made, they committed the act of shirk. And that which raises yet another question, why in the world did they worship a cow? Where did that come from even? Right? So we'll try to explore that question a little bit today also. But the fact that they made tawbah, for any crime, Allah Azza wa Jal will describe, even in this Quran, Allah will describe that tawbah is enough. And this is a very important thing for Muslims to understand. Tawbah alone, you turning to Allah sincerely and apologizing and promising Him that to the best of your ability, as with no intention whatsoever on your part, you will never repeat that mistake again. You're ashamed of what you did, you're promising Allah you won't do it again to the best of your ability, and you're going to because I say best of your ability because it's possible you might make the mistake again. But you have no intention to. It's not in the back of your mind that, yeah, I'm probably going to do this again. Not like that. And you develop a hatred for what you did in the past. You don't glorify it or reminisce about the mistake you made. You don't look back at it and get a weird, evil smile on your face or something. If you have that kind of tawbah, then those words are enough. There is no other additional penalty you have to pay. For example, people confuse the idea of hudud with tawbah. There are certain crimes in Islam that are punishable, like theft or zina or murder. There are certain crimes that are punishable. Now, some of those crimes, what if there are no witnesses? What if you weren't brought to trial? What if Allah covered that mistake for you? Or you did something wrong, like you did backbiting, or even let's take something serious like zina. Right? Somebody's committed zina. Zina is a very serious crime in this religion. It's not a small thing. But if there weren't 4 witnesses, then there is no physical punishment in this world. And you're not supposed to come forward and say, I would like to get punished for zina because I've done it, and confess to 4 people. As a matter of fact, a woman came to the Prophet, admit she's done it. Go away. She wanted to confess and be punished, but he sent her away. Then she came back again and said, I'm pregnant. He said, don't come back until you have the baby. He kept sending her back. The point I'm trying to make is tawbah to Allah is acceptable if you just have sincere words before Him. He doesn't need to see you punished in this world before it's acceptable. You see? We have a concept of, governments and judges and, authorities, that the only way you'll ever be forgiven for your crime is if you've done jail time or if you've paid a penalty. And unless you've paid a penalty, there's no way you're forgiven for your crime. You're still kind of a fugitive, you're still in trouble. Don't superimpose that on your concept of Allah. Allah is not like that. But then the question that arises from that is then why wasn't the tawbah of Banu Israel enough? Why were they given such a harsh, kill your own tribes people? Why were they given that? That's the answer that's going to come in the text. And by the way, this is kind of a missing chapter in the history of the Israelites. Some of the rationale behind why Allah gave him such harsh punishment is not mentioned in the Torah. As a matter of fact, what is mentioned is pretty ruthless. Like, a lot of Jewish history, as you study it in the Hebrew Bible, is pretty shocking. Like them burning down entire cities, killing men, women, and children, and all kinds of stuff by God's command. And Quran avoids all of that. Like, it doesn't actually attribute any of that to them. So actually, you might think that the Muslims or our sacred text, the Quran, is anti-Semitic or it's anti-Jewish. Or, as a matter of fact, if you compare it with the Hebrew Bible, it defends their dignity more than the Hebrew Bible itself does. It actually saves them a lot of disgrace on many occasions. On many, many, many occasions. For example, in their account of the Jericho being conquered, the city of Jericho, they crossed the water. Even though historically it's implausible that it was Jericho, if you go with certain date lines. But anyway, they were supposed to conquer the city of Jericho, and when they did, they had this concept of harem, which is like haram. It's a Hebrew term, and the idea was that they cannot take any anfal. You know what anfal are? Like the spoils of war. They can't take any of them. While they're in the wandering, they cannot have any spoils of war. So what they had to do was destroy everything. Which means the homes, the men, the women, the children. They couldn't even take prisoners. And so the biblical account is that they actually just engaged in massive killings of entire cities by God's command. We have nothing of the sort about them. We actually consider them innocent of a lot of those things. And actually, if you study carefully, according to what they've done with their book, it's not they that are being criminalized. It's not they that are being considered cruel or evil. You know who's being considered cruel? It's God Himself. It's actually an accusation against Allah Azza wa Jal, that Allah Azza wa Jal is bari from. Now, so that's the other thing I wanted to highlight in this discussion. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about the idea of the calf, where it came from. So I told you yesterday that the Israelites were made into, over time, because of the economic desperation, they became slaves. And they weren't the only ones turned into slaves. The Israelites are one of many ethnicities, all of them Semitic ethnicities, like the Canaanites from Canaan, and the Arabic term is Canaan, were from the region also. They were also turned into slaves in Egypt of the Coptics, of the pharaohs. Okay. Now for the slave masters, they all look the same. So for them, it's not like these are Bani Israel and these are the Canaanites, these are the Semites. They called all of them Semites. You know, it's like they look at anybody, like, you know, some people, they look at any of us and say, hey, you guys are Asian, right? Like, it doesn't matter where you're from, you're like, you know, or people from a certain part of the world, you're Chinese, right? No, I'm Korean, I'm Japanese. No, you're Chinese. It's all the same. You know, like they because you have this sense of supremacy, so you look at the races that you think of as inferior, and you just bunch all of them as one. But it works the other way too. All white people look the same to me, European, American, you know, I'm from Ohio, I'm from California, whatever, you're all the same. German, Polish, what's the difference? I don't understand. I still can't tell you from snow. So, you know, like, it's all good. So there's an oversimplification when it comes to stereotyping people, right? So the same kind of stereotyping happens from the master race to these slave races, the Canaanites and the Israelites. Now, the Banu Israel were people who worshipped one God. I told you they maintained that belief somehow or the other. Overall, they maintained that belief. But the people of Canaan, the Canaanites, they were actually worshippers of another god named El, E-L. That's how it's pronounced, El. And they said that the manifestation of that god is actually a calf. So in order to worship that god and to pay homage to that god, they used to build these mini statues of baby calves with horns. And they used to do this all over their tradition. And these two ethnicities, they're the lowest class of Egyptian society. They're the servant class. They're intermingling, they're living together, they're mixing with each other. You know, for example, I'll tell you, Muslims in India, right? Muslims in India live side by side for centuries with who? With Hindus. And so some Hindu practices, somehow or the other, made their way into Muslim practices. And some Muslim practices, in strange ways, have made their way into Hindu practices without it being a conscious thing. So a lot of, for example, in India, weddings, for example, and the kinds of clothing that we're dressed in, a lot of that has nothing to do with Islam, it has to do with Hindu tradition, but we've taken it on and it's just become part of the culture, right? So rituals mixed with each other. I'll tell you a scary story. My neighbor, back in Queens, when I used to live in Queens, our neighbor was a Hindu lady. And she used to go to Atlantic City for hijrah every once a month. Atlantic City to gamble, whatever. That's what she used to do. And one day she was going there, and like her bag was open, and this picture frame fell out of her bag. And I figured it might be like a picture of one of the gods or something. They take it for good luck. It was actually a framed Ayatul Kursi. And I said, why do you have that? Oh, she goes, no, this is for good luck. I take it every time I go to Atlantic City. So they're not that different from the Muslim liquor store owner who's got Ayatul Kursi on the cash register behind him, or, you know, they learn something's good from us at least, you know. Subhanallah. So rituals get mixed in with each other is the point, right? So the Israelites have now learned certain religious practices or certain rituals. Some of their lesser educated class has followed certain cult practices of the people of Canaan. Now that they've crossed the water, and Musa alayhi salam's supervision is not there, they go back to the same cultish practices. You know what that tells you? That they always had that in them, but they knew they'd get in trouble if they did it if Musa is there. So as soon as Musa alayhi salam is gone, back to the old ways. Come on, this is how we always did things, remember? So those mixed practices came back in. This, an interesting manifestation of the mixing of religions today, for example, is many parts of Guyanese society. The Guyanese a lot of them are immigrants mixed with the local West Indian population, and a lot of them were brought in during World War II, right? Indians and people from different parts of the subcontinent, etc. Some of them Muslim, some of them Hindu, some of them Christian, all mixed in together over time. And so you have people very confused about religion, very, very confused. Alhamdulillah, there's a good, strong Muslim population, but there's a huge population of Muslims who actually celebrate everything. Like they celebrate Christmas too. And they celebrate Eid also. And they celebrate Holi also. The Hindu holidays also. It's all muddled together. I learned some strange things while I was in New York. In New York, when I was there, I used to watch, because Sundays is a time where you have nothing to do, so I used to watch Queens Public Television. They have anybody could get on TV basically back in the day, right? So this Guyanese fellow, used to get on there, and he had a program on Ramadan with Arsalan, and he would have nasheeds and singing and this and that, and And then 20 minutes later, same dude is actually like Rama something, and he's got a Hindu show. It's the same dude. He just put on a different hat, and I'm like, whoa, that is amazing. So there can be a kind of religious schizophrenia that takes place. And that is something that even happens today, but happened back in the day also. Like you may have seen a modern silly manifestation of it is you have people that are like driving there's some hippies that are driving their car, they've got like the crescent to represent Islam, and the crucifix, and they've got like the Hindu symbols, and they've got the peace sign. And they're just like, it's all good, man. I love your truth, you love my truth, everything is truth. That kind of thing. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background. It's really fascinating. Some of these statues of the Canaanites, the calves, have survived to this day. They actually still exist, and you can find pictures of them. If you look up Canaanite bulls or Canaan bulls, even Google Images, you'll find a bunch of pictures of these ancient statues that have survived from that time. But anyway, that was the inspiration behind this kind of thing. Now, why did they do this? This to them was a representation of God. Allah calls Himself what in these ayat? The reason I brought this up, what does Allah call Himself in these ayat? فَتُوبُوا إِلَى بَارِئِكُمْ. He didn't say فَتُوبُوا إِلَى رَبِّكُمْ فَتُوبُوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. Of the names of Allah, Allah chose which name? Bari. Like the name He mentions in Surah Al-Hashr also, Al-Khaliq, Al-Bari, Al-Musawwir. Right? Al-Bari is one of the names of Allah. And its basic meaning is not too different from Al-Khaliq. It actually means something very similar to the Creator. So you find Al-Bari huwa alladhi khalaqa al-khalq la an mithal. That's the key part. La an mithal. And then bara Allahu an-nasama wa khalaqa as-samawati wal-ard. Bariya or bara'a is actually a little bit different from khalaqa. Khalaqa means creating anything. Bara'a actually means to create something living. So bariya or bara'a comes when Allah creates something that is living, that has life. Now, that's the first distinction about, because if Allah created a rock, you don't say bara'a al-hajar. You say khalaqa al-hajar. You understand? So that's the first difference. The second difference is that it's when Allah makes something and the idea is that there was nothing that He based it on. For example, when you build a new house, it's based on some idea of a house. Or when someone makes a painting, it's based on a picture they have in their head. It's you build based on what's already there. Right? You don't start from absolute zero. Any creativity we have now is actually in some way or form a compound of previously existing ideas. It's just this idea didn't connect to that idea. And when they do, we have creative thinking. But the idea of Bari is someone who created something with no pre-existing models. Human beings were created, but there was no pre-existing picture of what should this be based on, what should hands be based on, what should eyes be based on. This is entirely unique, unprecedented creation of Allah. Why is that name strategic and important in this ayah? By using that name, Musa alayhi salam is telling his people that you believe in a God who creates you with no sample beforehand, and yet you can turn around and make a sample for Him. And you can turn around and create this thing that doesn't even have life, and you can worship through it a God that gave all of life, the one who is Bari. How can you put something lifeless that violates the very essence of who He is in being Bari or Bari? So فَتُوبُوا إِلَى بَارِئِكُمْ ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ عِنْدَ ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ عِنْدَ بَارِئِكُمْ. That's the phrasing that I wanted to highlight to you. Now, when He comes and makes this call to them, we already read what they had to do. They had to kill every one of their own people. And then Allah will accept their tawbah. What was their response? Yesterday I just told you they went ahead and did it, but they didn't just go ahead and do it. And this is the missing chapter from Jewish history. They didn't just go ahead and do it. What did they do instead? وَإِذْ قُلْتُمْ يَا مُوسَى لَن نُؤْمِنَ لَكَ. When you turned around and said, Musa, we're not going to accept what you're saying. When you put iman, nu'mina, with a lam, nu'mina laka, as opposed to nu'mina bika. We say amantu billahi or amantu lillahi? Billahi. When you believe in Allah, that's a ba. When you add a lam instead of a ba, it actually means to accept what somebody's saying, to give in to somebody's demands. Lan nu'mina laka means we still believe in you, we're not going to accept what you're saying. We're not going to cave into your demands. Hatta narallaha jahratan. We're not going to listen to anything you have to say because what you are asking us to do is too insane to try to kill our own people. Well, there's no way we're going to do that until we see Allah face to face to the point where we can hear Him. Jahratan, actually, zahiran. face to face, obvious, so he can become visible to us. أنه كان مجهرا أي صاحب جهر ورفع لصوته. They say in Arabic that jahr also means not someone who's face to face alone, but whose voice you can hear yourself. It's like they're telling Musa alayhi salam, we want to see Allah and we'd like to hear Him ourselves. You get to go up to the mountain and talk to Him and hear Him. We'd like to go see Him and we'd like to go talk to Him ourselves. By the way, this sick question that they asked, it's rooted actually, this twisted idea is rooted in something beautiful. Musa alayhi salam, before all of this, had actually at one point told Allah, because he spoke to Allah regularly. وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا, Quran says. Musa alayhi salam used to engage in a conversation with Allah, and Allah used to engage in conversation with him regularly, initiated by Allah. So when this happened, one day Musa alayhi salam is, and you're getting closer and closer to Allah, the more you are, talking with Him directly. So one day Musa alayhi salam finds the courage and he says, رَبِّ أَرِنِي أَنظُرْ إِلَيْكَ. Master, show me. I just want to look at you. I just want to stare at you. He's been talking to him min wara' al-hijab. He's talking to him behind a barrier through the bush, right? But he has never seen Allah. But the love of Allah intensified in him so much that he just can't bear this anymore, and he just wants to see Allah. This is actually a desire of every believer also. وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. There are going to be faces on that day, on Judgment Day, that are lit up. They're going to be staring at their Master. We're going to be looking at Allah. Allah Azza wa Jal describes the people who He's angry with, لَا يَنظُرُ إِلَيْهِمْ. He's not going to look at them. You know what that means? Bil-mukhalaf, it actually means that there are people who Allah will look at, and they will look at Him. They're going to be meeting with Allah. So, and then when we meet with Allah, then you understand, Salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. That Allah Azza wa Jal Himself will say salam. A master who's full of mercy. But Musa alayhi salam, his love of Allah intensified so much that he told Allah Azza wa Jal in this conversation, Ya Allah, I just want to see you. Just show me, I want to see you. And Allah of course told him, Lan tarani, you're not going to be able to see me. Now the Israelites know this story, but they say, you get to talk to him. If you're going to ask us to kill our people, excuse me, why don't you take us up to the mountain and we'll talk to him face to face, and we can handle seeing him. You couldn't handle seeing him, we can. We got this. This is what they told him. When they made this statement, they are not so different from Fir'aun. They're no longer that different than Fir'aun. Why not? He says, أَطَّلِعُ إِلَىٰ إِلَهِ Musa. You know what? Why don't you, build me a tower? Musa goes up on a mountain and he has a fire on top of that mountain, and through that fire he speaks to his God. You know what? I don't need to go to his mountain. Why don't you make me a tower taller than that mountain? He told his subordinate, Haman, why don't you build me this tower and make it on fire so that I can go up there and I can talk to Musa's God myself. If he's got a direct connection, I can make my own direct connection. This was his arrogance. To not understand that the only people Allah speaks to are the messengers, alayhimus salatu wassalam. To not understand the sacred nature of revelation. There are people to this day, their problem with religion? Why does God choose to speak to some people? Why can't He talk to me? I'm available, my phone is on. There are people like that I've spoken to. They say, why doesn't God just talk to me? Why does He have to go through people? Why do I have to listen to this messenger? And this sickness was even manifest in them when an instruction came that was against their will, that wasn't going the way they wanted. And it's not a small ask, by the way. Kill your own people is not a small ask. But the true nature of their lack of belief in Allah came out. And they said, we're not going to accept what you're saying until we see Allah face to face. By the way, there's an inherent psychology that became manifest in this statement. It came out. When they hear Musa, do they actually believe they're hearing the word of Allah? Or the instructions of Allah? No. They didn't say, we won't believe what Allah is saying. We won't accept what Allah is saying. We won't accept what you're saying, like you're making it up. Why don't you prove it's from Allah? It's as though they're telling the Messenger ﷺ that they don't really believe he's a messenger. That they don't, and what position are these people in? To not believe in Musa ﷺ as a messenger, the one who's delivered them from Fir'aun. The one with his staff, Allah parted the water. What position are they in to talk like this? But they did. They did. Now I told you beforehand, tawbah is very easy. Had Musa alayhi salam come down and said you have to make tawbah, and they were immediate in making tawbah, maybe even the harsher punishments wouldn't have been revealed. But Allah Azza wa Jal knew that they are going to be this way. By the way, Allah tests with harsh instructions sometimes when He doesn't fulfill. What instruction did He give Ibrahim alayhi salam? Slaughter your child. But did it actually come to pass? No. In Surah An-Nisa, He actually put us on the spot, Muslims on the spot. وَلَوْ أَنَّا كَتَبْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَنِ اقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ أَوْ اخْرُجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِكُمْ. Had we made the law over you people, that you have to kill your own people, or you have to leave your homes. What does that sound like? Which nation does that sound like? Kill your own, leave your homes. The Israelites. مَا فَعَلُوهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ مِّنْهُمْ. Most people wouldn't have done it. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ فَعَلُوا مَا يُوعَظُونَ بِهِ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. And had they done what they're being told to do, it would have been better for them. وَأَشَدُّ تَثْبِيتًا. It would have been a more firm, more powerful, long-term, beneficial decision for them. Anyway, so they say, we're not going to believe until we see Allah face to face. On this note, I want to tell you that this sickness did not leave them. And it shows up in the altered version of the Hebrew Bible that we don't believe in. We believe in the Torah when it matches with the Quran. When it says things that we just cannot accept because of our understanding of Tawheed, then you see how that idea that they want to see Allah, they want to hear Allah themselves, they don't want to go through a messenger. It came back into their text in such dubious ways. You remember what Allah sent over them? The ayat are coming. What Allah sent over them when they used to travel in the desert? Allah sent clouds over them. Al-Ghamam. You know how the Bible talks about these clouds? Allah Azza wa Jalla says we sent a shading cloud over them. And I'll give you the linguistics of it a little bit later when we get to the word. But how did they describe it? By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them. This is the biblical account. Several verses of the Bible in which basically God was in the cloud. God was in the cloud. And when they built the tabernacle, which is their portable qibla, their haram, which is the tabut that carried the staff of Musa and other things, they believed God was inside it. When they used to worship, you know how children think Allah lives inside the Kaaba? That's okay when they're kids. That's okay. We know that you can't help children understand the ghaib at a certain young age, so it's all right. And their imagination runs crazy a little bit. But as adults, you and I know that that's a very inappropriate thing to say about Allah Azza wa Jalla. But they even took that favor of Allah and they said actually it was God Himself in the cloud over us and we'd hear Him sometimes. And they make reference to this in their text. SubhanAllah. So this is, we won't accept what you're saying until we see Allah face to face. What did Allah do with them? فَأَخَذَتْكُمُ الصَّاعِقَةُ فَأَخَذَتْكُمُ الصَّاعِقَةُ. Then the loud explosive sound grabbed a hold of you. What is صَاعِقَة? صَاعِقَ الْإِنسان غَشِيَ عَلَيْهِ وَذَهَبَ عَقْلُهُ. When something overshadows the human being and he loses his mind. صَوْتٌ يَسْمَعُهُ كَالْحَدَّةِ شَدِيدًا. When you hear some very loud explosive sound, that's actually called a sa'iqah. You know how they have sensory deprivation or like sensory torture, like really loud sounds and it drives you crazy and you start screaming and you don't look like you're in your right senses anymore? That's the kind of sound that overtook them. They were not willing to listen to the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam. And what I find even offensive here is they don't actually call Musa alayhi salam Ya Rasulullah, Ya Ayyuhan Nabi, Ya Ayyuhan Rasul, Ya Musa. This is how you talk to your messenger. Allah can call him Ya Musa, fine, that's Allah. But you're his ummah, you're supposed to show some respect when you speak to your messenger. At least call him Ya Ayyuhan Nabi, but no, calling him like he's just one of them. No respect whatsoever. And so, فَأَخَذَتْكُمُ الصَّاعِقَةُ, the loud explosive sound got a hold of them. There's actually one reference to this in Exodus. There's only a slight reference to this idea, and it's not even mentioned as an incident. Moses is basically told, I think it's Exodus 19:21, God tells him, make sure you tell the people not to break through and try to speak to God, because they'll get killed. In other words, it seems as though they said, you get away, we'll go up the mountain and find out ourselves. That's the kind of attitude they had when they said hatta narallaha jahratan. So they actually, it seems from the Bible, started to try to climb up the mountain of Tur as a sarcastic response to Musa alayhi salam's instruction from Allah. And so Allah says, Allah sent a loud explosive sound. All of them died. All of them right then and there died, and they saw it happen before their eyes. وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. And you were standing there still staring as death was coming at you and it took you. ثُمَّ بَعَثْنَاكُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَوْتِكُمْ. Then we raised you even after you had been killed, even after your deaths. So Allah kills these defiant people. This is all before they had to kill their own. They spoke defiantly against Allah. Allah gave them death right then and there. Then He raised them back from the death. Dead, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, so you may be grateful next time. Hopefully you'll be grateful this time. So now we're learning the background of why was the punishment so intense. Why was tawbah so difficult for them? Because their defiance was no normal kind of defiance.